Everyone keeps asking the wrong question. They ask, why are men afraid of marriage now? That's not the truth. The truth is darker. Because the men walking away today aren't confused. They're not bitter. They're not lonely. They're awake. Here's the part nobody wants to admit. The men rejecting remarriage are the men who already believed in it once. They trusted the vows. They trusted the system. They trusted love backed by law. And then they watched everything they built get weighed, divided and reassigned like inventory. Dark psychology teaches us something brutal. Once the brain associates love with punishment, it rewires for survival. So when these men say never again, it's not emotion speaking, it's pattern recognition. They ran the numbers, they remembered the pain, and they realized something terrifying. The contract wasn't protecting them, it was the weapon. And when a man finally sees the trap clearly, something inside him shuts the door permanently. Let me tell you something most men will never say out loud. Divorce doesn't just end a marriage, it reprograms the mind. In dark psychology, this is called negative imprinting. When one intense experience permanently reshapes how risk is evaluated. And divorce hits harder than most traumas because it attacks three core identities at once: provider, protector, and planner. Most of these men didn't leave because they hated their wives. They left because they finally understood the cost of staying and the cost of repeating it. After divorce, the male brain stops asking, is she the one? It starts asking, what's the downside if this fails? That's a dangerous shift, because love doesn't survive spreadsheets. And once logic replaces fantasy, romance loses its power. These men didn't swear off women. They swore off legal exposure. And when you understand what the system actually takes from them, not emotionally, but mechanically, you understand why the fear isn't loneliness, it's re-entry. Because the first loss hurt, but the second loss would be fatal. Here's where emotion dies and math takes over. Men don't leave remarriage because of stories. They leave because of statistics. First marriage, roughly a coin flip. Second marriages, the odds turn hostile. 2 out of 3 fail. Dark psychology explains why this hits men differently. The male brain accepts risk only when reward outweighs loss. In remarriage, the loss isn't capped. The loss is everything. Age makes it worse. At 30, a man can lose half and rebuild. At 50, that loss isn't a setback, it's a sentence. Retirement evaporates. Legacy disappears. Freedom shrinks. And the silent terror most men never say out loud is this: if this fails again, I won't have time to recover. That fear isn't paranoia, it's accurate threat assessment. Once the mind accepts that truth, desire collapses, because attraction cannot override survival. When men look at remarriage now, they don't see love. They see a leveraged bet with collapsing odds. But money isn't even the deepest wound. Money can be rebuilt. Trust cannot. This is where dark psychology reveals the real scar divorce leaves behind. When a man is betrayed by someone who promised permanence, the brain doesn't just feel pain, it rewrites its definition of safety. That's relational trauma. Every future relationship is filtered through one question: how much damage could this person do if they change? Marriage gives someone maximum leverage over your life, your assets, your time, your peace. Once that leverage is used against a man, his nervous system never forgets. So men say, I'm more guarded now. I don't ignore red flags. I don't let myself care the same way. What they're really saying is, I learned what vulnerability costs. When vulnerability becomes dangerous, distance feels like freedom. That's why these men don't dream about weddings anymore. They dream about quiet, about control, about never sitting in a courtroom again. And here's what nobody was prepared for. The men who walked away didn't collapse. They exhaled. Dark psychology calls this relief after chronic stress. The moment the nervous system realizes the threat is gone. Men describe it the same way. My shoulders dropped. My home feels peaceful. I can breathe again. That's not loneliness. That's recovery. For years, they lived in emotional surveillance, monitoring moods, avoiding conflict, managing tension they could never solve. When the marriage ended, the noise stopped. Health improved, finances stabilized, relationships with children got better, energy returned. One man said it perfectly. The loneliest I ever felt wasn't after divorce. It was sleeping next to someone who didn't see me. They didn't choose isolation. They chose the lighter burden. And once peace becomes your baseline, you protect it fiercely. Here's the misunderstanding. People think these men are alone. They're not. They date. They connect. They love. They just remove the contract. Dark psychology calls this risk decoupling. Separating emotional reward from systemic exposure. Why risk everything for something you can already have? Intimacy doesn't require paperwork. Connection doesn't require courts. Companionship doesn't require collateral. Remarriage no longer looks like romance. It looks like liability. What shocked most people isn't their logic. It's their happiness. Many report higher satisfaction after deciding never to remarry because they regained control. Control over time, money, space, peace. And once a man experiences life without constant negotiation, he becomes impossible to pressure. Here's the shift that seals the decision. Men stop fearing being alone and start fearing being trapped. That's loss of autonomy trauma. It's not the woman that triggers anxiety. It's the system attached to her. Love can end. Obligations don't. Heartbreak heals. Courtrooms linger. So men adapt. They stop proving. They stop chasing approval. They stop living by someone else's script. They ask a forbidden question. What if my happiest life doesn't include marriage? Once answered honestly, the old dream collapses. What replaces it is self-ownership. Society sells marriage as proof of success. These men discovered happiness doesn't need permission. They stopped asking if they were lovable enough. They started asking why they would give away a life that finally feels right. Boundaries rise, standards harden. Tolerance for chaos disappears. They didn't become colder, they became calmer. Once you learn that walking away is survivable, even liberating, fear loses its grip. And when fear disappears, urgency disappears with it. Here's the truth nobody likes. Marriage only works when leverage is balanced. Modern men know it isn't. When one side can leave and still be rewarded, and the other pays for years afterward, the contract stops being romantic. It becomes strategic. So men withdraw, quietly, calmly, irreversibly, not out of hatred, out of clarity. I'm not angry, one man said. I'm just not volunteering to lose again. That's the movement. And here's the ending nobody expected. These men didn't fail at marriage. They graduated from the illusion. A ring doesn't guarantee loyalty. A contract doesn't guarantee love. Sacrifice doesn't guarantee appreciation. What it guarantees is consequences when things go wrong. So they chose peace over performance, freedom over fantasy, control over chaos, and the most uncomfortable truth of all, a man who is happy alone is impossible to manipulate. He doesn't need validation. He doesn't need rescue. He chooses himself. That's not losing. That's winning, just not by society's rules.